I used to think love was unshakable. That once you found a person who knew your favorite coffee order, kissed your forehead absent-mindedly while watching TV, and reached for your hand in their sleep, you had something indestructible. My husband and I had that. Or so I thought. We had been married for 4 years, together for 6. Life was good, warm, comfortable, steady. We weren't the couple who stayed up arguing into the night or exchanged cold silences across the dinner table. If anything, I thought we were one of the lucky ones. Then, 2 months ago, I started noticing little things. His phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket. Work trips, which had once been a rare inconvenience, were suddenly frequent and extended. He'd come home exhausted but oddly distant, like his mind was still somewhere else. I told myself I was overthinking. That paranoia was an ugly thing, and I wouldn't let it creep into my marriage. Then, last week, a stranger called me. A man's voice, calm, but laced with something I later realized was restrained fury, introduced himself as Daniel. He was the husband of my husband's colleague. The one he had been having an affair with. Daniel didn't waste time with pleasantries. He sent me screenshots. Proof. Messages between my husband and his wife, intimate and undeniable. Plans, confessions, cheap love notes, promises they made to each other. I read them all, standing in my kitchen, my tea cooling beside me, my hands trembling. And then, something inside me settled. A calm, chilling sort of clarity. If my husband wanted this woman, he could have her. But not before knowing exactly how much I knew. I spent the next few days gathering evidence. Every hotel reservation. Every Venmo transaction. Every ridiculous love note he had written to her. I printed them all. Then, I wrote a 10-page letter. I wasn't the type to scream or throw things. No, I wanted something better. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done, slowly, agonizingly. The letter was my masterpiece. I taped it inside the lining of his suitcase, the one he had packed for yet another business trip. I knew he wouldn't check until he unpacked at his destination, and by then, my final message would be delivered. I had planned it perfectly. That evening, after his flight took off, I sent a single text to both him and his mistress. Hope you enjoy your trip. There's a letter in your suitcase. Read it carefully. I want a divorce. Then, I turned off my phone, exhaled deeply, and waited for the world to break. The moment after I sent the message was oddly quiet. I expected an immediate call, frantic texts, maybe even an email. But my phone remained stubbornly silent. He had landed an hour and a half ago. I knew because I checked. He had promised to text me when he arrived, something he always did, without fail. But tonight? Nothing. I sent him a picture of our kids, thinking maybe, just maybe, some part of him would remember the life he was about to throw away. Again, nothing. Then, something strange happened. My text stopped delivering. Green bubbles. I frowned, my stomach twisting into something tight and bitter. That's when the realization hit me like a punch to the chest. He had blocked me. I stared at my phone, the betrayal morphing into something colder, anger, maybe, or disgust. Blocking me wasn't an accident. It wasn't a phone issue or bad reception. It was a choice. I was still processing it when my best friend, Mia, arrived at my house. She had insisted on coming over, claiming she wouldn't let me spend the night alone. She was right, of course. The moment she stepped inside, I shoved my phone at her. Try texting him. She did. And her message went through, blue, delivered. That confirmed it. He really blocked you, she whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. I let out a breathy, humorless laugh. Guess he thinks that'll stop me. Mia sat beside me on the couch, her hands gripping my knee. So what now? You still want to do the whole confrontation thing? I nodded. I have to. I worked too hard on this. My plan had been simple, wait for check-in, then call their hotel room. Make sure she was there. Make sure he read the letter in front of her. I wanted her to hear my words, to know exactly what kind of man she was welcoming into her life. But now, with his number blocked, I had a complication. I couldn't text. I couldn't call. Mia, ever the problem solver, tapped a finger against her chin. You could call the hotel directly. That was an option. A good one, actually. I took a deep breath and reached for my phone, looking up the number of the luxury resort they were staying at. Are you sure? Mia asked one last time. I pressed the call button. The line rang. And then, an operator picked up. Good evening, thank you for calling. Hi, yes, I interrupted, my voice steady. I need to be connected to a guest. Room under the name of, I gave my husband's full name. A pause. One moment, please. The line clicked, and I held my breath. Then, after 3 rings, someone picked up. But it wasn't him. It was her. The mistress. She hesitated, as if realizing who she was speaking to. Hello? I smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Enjoying your vacation? Silence. Then, she hung up. I pulled the phone away from my ear, my heart hammering. Mia, who had been watching intently, grabbed my arm. What happened? She answered. My voice was eerily calm. And then she hung up. Mia's eyes widened. That's it? No screaming? No pathetic excuses? Nope. I tossed my phone onto the table. But she knows. And so does he. I leaned back, exhaling. The waiting game had begun. I wouldn't have to do anything else. Because now, it was only a matter of time. Mia and I sat in silence for a few moments, both of us staring at my phone as if it might suddenly spring to life. It didn't. So what now? Mia finally asked. I exhaled, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle into my bones. Now? Now we wait. For what, I wasn't entirely sure. Maybe for him to call. Maybe for the weight of my words to sink into his thick skull. Maybe for the moment when he would realize that the woman sitting beside him, the one he had risked everything for, wasn't worth the wreckage. Or maybe I was just waiting for reality to hit me. The next few hours dragged on. Mia eventually fell asleep on my couch, but I couldn't bring myself to rest. My mind replayed everything, his lies, the signs I had ignored, the gut feeling I had shoved down over and over again. At some point in the early morning, my phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it in my rush to grab it. Unknown caller. I hesitated. Then, I answered. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did they. But I could hear breathing. Heavy, tense breathing. Then, his voice. You had no right. I almost laughed. The audacity. No right? I repeated. I'm your wife, and you're on vacation with your mistress. I think I had every right. A beat of silence. I could hear movement in the background, shuffling, a door closing. Was she still there? Could she hear this? You went through my things, he accused, his voice lower now. I went through my own things, I corrected. Your credit card? Our shared account. Your emails? On our home computer. Your suitcase? In my house. His breathing quickened, but he didn't argue. He knew I was right. I decided to twist the knife. Did she read the letter? His silence was my answer. I leaned back into the couch, satisfaction curling in my chest. Good. I hope she liked the part about the money you spent on her. The gifts. The hotels. Because I know I did. He let out a slow breath. Is this what you wanted? To humiliate me? I gritted my teeth. I wanted you to tell me the truth. But since you couldn't do that, I had to find it myself. I was going to tell you, he muttered. I rolled my eyes. Sure. Right after the next trip. Or maybe after you moved in with her. His silence told me everything. Mia stirred beside me, blinking awake. She shot me a questioning look, and I mouthed, "It's him." Her eyes widened, and she quickly sat up. I focused back on the call. Let's just cut to the chase, okay? You don't want to be married to me anymore. Fine. You made that choice when you booked this trip. So let's stop pretending this is something we can come back from. A long pause. Then, in the quietest voice, he said, "I never wanted to lose you." A strange, unexpected sadness bloomed in my chest. Not because I believed him, but because I knew he believed himself. That's the thing about choices, I whispered. Once you make them, you don't always get to undo them. I hung up. This time, he didn't call back. But I knew the storm was far from over. The morning after that call, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Maybe even months. The kind that comes when you've passed the point of no return. My husband, no, soon-to-be ex-husband, had made his choice. And I had made mine. I got out of bed, stretched, and started making a mental checklist. I had already prepared most of it. The divorce papers were ready to be filed. His belongings? Those had to go. I had spent the last month collecting evidence, but I had spent the last week preparing for his exit. By noon, Mia was back at my house, along with 3 of my closest friends. Operation Purge, one of them asked, grinning. Operation Get Him the Hell Out, I corrected, handing them empty boxes. And so, we began. His clothes were easy, every shirt, every pair of pants, every stupid, vintage, band tee he refused to throw out, all stuffed into boxes. His shoes followed, then his toiletries. But then we got to the sentimental things. A framed wedding photo. A coffee mug that said "World's Best Husband," a gift I had given him on our first anniversary. A book I had once written a sweet note in, before gifting it to him on a random Tuesday, just because I loved him. I picked up the book and flipped it open, my own handwriting staring back at me. I hope every page reminds you how much I love you. I snapped the book shut and shoved it into a box. Garage, I muttered. Everything goes in the garage. Mia hesitated. You sure? You don't want to? I cut her off with a sharp shake of my head. No. It's done. And just like that, the home we had built together became my home. By the time we finished, the sun was beginning to set. Every last trace of him had been packed, stacked, and shoved into the garage. I stood in the doorway, staring at the boxes, my arms crossed over my chest. What if he refuses to take his stuff? Mia asked. I smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Then I'll set it on fire. Mia snorted. Remind me never to cross you. I turned to her, my face suddenly serious. You'd never betray me like that. She sobered instantly, nodding. Never. And that was the difference. As night fell, I locked the garage. Then, just to be extra sure, I changed the locks on the front door. He had blocked me. He had shut me out. Well, now, I was shutting him out too. And when he came back, he wouldn't be coming home. Because this was no longer his home. The night he was supposed to return, I felt no anxiety. No second guessing. Just a cold, detached sort of anticipation. I knew he would come. Knew he would knock on that door like nothing had changed. But everything had. By the time his flight landed, I had already showered, changed into my comfiest pajamas, and poured myself a glass of wine. Mia was staying over again, sitting cross-legged on the couch, waiting with me like we were about to watch a season finale of the most dramatic show ever. He'll be here in, she checked her phone, 20 minutes, give or take. You sure you don't want me to record this? I smirked. No need. This moment is for me. Sure enough, at exactly 10:13 p.m., there was a knock. I didn't move right away. I let him knock again. Harder this time. Then, I stood, stretched leisurely, and strolled to the front door. I didn't open it. Instead, I spoke through the wood. "What do you want?" There was a pause. Then, his voice. "Seriously?" I folded my arms. "Very. Let me in." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "No." The doorknob jiggled, but of course, it wouldn't budge. I had changed the locks. I had taken away his key. "You changed the locks?" He sounded genuinely shocked. "Of course, I did." I tilted my head. "What, did you think you'd waltz back in after your little vacation?" He sighed heavily. "Can we just talk?" "We are talking." "Face to face," he clarified. I pretended to consider it. "No, I don't think so." From inside the house, I could hear Mia muffling laughter with a pillow. He knocked again, louder this time. "Come on, don't be like this." I raised an eyebrow. "Don't be like this?" Like what exactly? A woman with self-respect? A wife who wasn't about to let a cheating bastard back into her home? I leaned against the door. "Your stuff is in the garage. You can take it and leave." Silence. Then, in a voice that sounded so small, so different from the arrogance he had left with, he asked, "Is this really it?" A strange, unexpected ache bloomed in my chest. Not because I wanted him back. Not because I was sad. But because I had spent years building a life with this man, and in the end, he didn't even deserve a goodbye in person. "This was over the moment you decided to cheat," I said softly. "I just made it official." For a long time, he didn't say anything. Then, I heard shuffling. The unmistakable sound of him walking away. I peeked through the peephole. He was standing in front of the garage, staring at the boxes stacked inside like he couldn't believe this was happening. I turned away before I could see more. Before I could give myself the chance to feel anything for him again. When the sound of his car faded into the night, Mia finally spoke. "Well," she said, taking a sip of wine. That was satisfying. I exhaled, a slow, steady breath. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I actually agreed. I woke up the next morning feeling something I hadn't in weeks, peace. It wasn't total. It wasn't perfect. But it was there, humming beneath my skin like the first hint of sunlight after a storm. He had come. He had left. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't have to care anymore. I was sipping my coffee when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Hello?" A pause. Then, a woman's voice. "Hi." I knew that voice. It was her. The mistress. I set my coffee down, leaning back in my chair. "Well. This is unexpected." She let out a shaky breath. I just wanted to talk." I smiled. "Oh. You didn't want to hang up on me this time?" She hesitated. "Look, I know you probably hate me." "Probably." I mused. "Sweetheart, I definitely do." She swallowed. I could hear it over the phone. "I didn't call to fight." "Good. Because you wouldn't win." Another pause. Then, quieter, she asked, "Did he come home last night?" I blinked. Ah. There it is. This wasn't an apology call. This wasn't guilt or remorse or some pathetic attempt at justifying what she had done. She was checking on him. I smirked. Nope. Silence. I could practically feel her nerves crackling through the phone. He told me he'd talk to you," she said hesitantly. "Oh, he did." I sipped my coffee, relishing the power shift. Right before I told him to get lost. She inhaled sharply. I tilted my head. Let me guess. He promised you some grand romantic ending, didn't he? Told you he was gonna leave me on his terms. Maybe even planned out the perfect little moment for you two to finally be together. More silence. I chuckled darkly. Yeah. Didn't work out that way, did it? She exhaled shakily. I don't know what he told you about me, but... Oh, I know enough. I leaned forward. I know you had a husband. I know you wrecked 2 marriages for a man who was never yours to begin with. And I definitely know you're realizing right about now that maybe, just maybe, he's not the man you thought he was. Her breath hitched. Bingo. I let the silence stretch between us. Let her feel the weight of it. Then, finally, she spoke. But this time, her voice was barely a whisper. I think I made a mistake. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, honey. That's the first smart thing you've said all call. She started to say something else, but I was already done. I hung up. And as I sat there, coffee still warm in my hands, I realized something. I didn't just win. I was free. After I hung up on her, I half expected my phone to ring again. Maybe with more excuses, maybe with tears, maybe even with some desperate attempt at solidarity, as if we were 2 women wronged by the same man instead of her being an active participant in the betrayal. But the phone stayed silent. I smirked. That was probably for the best. Mia arrived an hour later, carrying a bag of pastries and a look of curiosity. You're smirking. That's either a very good sign or a very bad one. I popped a piece of croissant into my mouth. She called me. Mia froze. She what? I grinned, licking crumbs off my fingers. Yep. Your reaction is exactly why I waited to tell you in person. She practically threw herself onto the couch. Tell me everything. So I did. By the time I finished, Mia was staring at me like I had just told her the best gossip of the decade. Oh my God. She regrets it? I stretched my legs out, feeling a satisfaction so deep it was almost luxurious. Seems that way. Mia let out a low whistle. Wow. That's fast. Usually, reality doesn't hit homewreckers until, at least after the honeymoon phase. I shrugged. She got a front row seat to the fallout. Probably saw a version of him she didn't like. Mia grinned. Let me guess. The pathetic, scrambling, blocked my wife's number version? I raised my coffee mug in agreement. She laughed, shaking her head. So what happens now? You think he'll try to come back? I set my mug down, my expression hardening. I don't care. And I meant it. For the first time since this mess started, I felt something real. Something clean. Closure. It wasn't the kind where everything was neatly tied up with a bow. There was still the divorce to finalize, custody to figure out, pieces of my life to rebuild. But the weight? The constant ache in my chest, the loop of memories that had played on repeat, the questions of why wasn't I enough? Gone. Mia must have seen it in my face because her teasing softened into something else. Something warmer. You're really okay, aren't you? She murmured. I smiled, small but sure. Yeah. I think I am. And for the first time in months, I wasn't just saying it. I was. The email came a week later. No grand gesture. No last-minute declaration of love. Just a sterile, businesslike subject line. Divorce agreement, please review. I stared at it for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. This was it. The finality of everything we had built, reduced to a single document. Mia, who had been scrolling through her phone beside me, peeked over. That him? I nodded. She whistled low. Well. He sure is romantic. I exhaled sharply, then clicked the email open. The document was straightforward. He wasn't contesting anything. No fight over the house, no argument over finances. It was almost too easy. Almost guilt-ridden. Mia tapped her chin. You think he's just trying to be done with it, or he finally realized how badly he screwed up. I finished for her. She shrugged. Yeah. That. I didn't answer. Because, honestly, I didn't care anymore. I scrolled to the bottom of the document. Saw the blank space waiting for my signature. For a moment, I hesitated. Not because I had any doubts, but because this was the last time his name and mine would be tied together in any official way. Then, without another thought, I signed. Mia leaned over. How do you feel? I looked at my name on the screen. The one I was reclaiming. And then, I smiled. Like I finally closed the book. I hit send. And with that, my marriage was over. And my new life? It was just beginning. The morning after I sent the email, I woke up feeling light. Not happy, exactly. Not yet. But free. Like I had finally stepped out of the wreckage and was standing on solid ground for the first time in months. I made coffee. I sat on my porch. I let the silence settle around me, not the heavy, painful silence I had felt when he was lying to me, but a new kind. A peaceful kind. I was alone. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. Mia showed up around noon, as expected. She had taken it upon herself to be my official post-divorce cheerleader, and I wasn't about to stop her. Okay, she announced, plopping onto my couch. Now that you're legally single, what's next? I smirked. World domination. She snorted. I was thinking more along the lines of a night out or a vacation. I hummed, considering it. A vacation doesn't sound bad. Mia's eyes lit up. A revenge vacation? I rolled my eyes. It's not revenge if I'm just enjoying my life. She grinned. I like the way you think. And the truth was, I did too. For so long, I had been stuck in the past, trying to understand, trying to fix, trying to hold on. But now? Now, I didn't have to do any of that. I could go anywhere. Be anyone. I was mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what happened next. 2 weeks after the papers were finalized, I did something unexpected. I took his vacation. The one he had planned for himself and his mistress, the same luxurious getaway he had used as an escape from our marriage. Only this time, I was the one boarding the flight. Mia came with me, of course. I can't believe you actually went through with it, she said, stretching out on the hotel balcony. This is iconic. I smirked, sipping my cocktail. Why waste a perfectly good trip? And honestly, it felt good. Not petty, not vengeful, just right. Like I was reclaiming something that had once been stolen from me. I lounged by the pool, indulged in spa treatments, and spent my nights laughing with Mia over extravagant dinners. It was everything he had promised her. But in the end, I was the one living it. On our last night, as I stood on the balcony overlooking the ocean, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I didn't need to guess who it was. I miss you. I stared at the words for a long moment. And then, I laughed. A deep, real, freeing laugh. Because the truth was, he didn't miss me. He missed the version of me who tolerated his lies. The woman who bent over backward to make his life easier, who put him first, who trusted him even when he didn't deserve it. That version of me was gone. I deleted the message without responding. Then, I set my phone down, picked up my drink, and turned back toward the future. Because the best revenge wasn't anger or bitterness. It was simply moving on. And I was finally ready to do just that. The end.